GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This here is episode 121. 121, that's right, the Buffalo Bills versus the New York Jets. You can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well to stay up to date on the latest podcasts. As you all know by now, I am Ryan Wolfe at WolfeLTD. My normal co-host, John Cimino at IamJCMoney, on assignment this week. So we are joined again by the man of the hour, Brayton Wilson, at Brayton J. Wilson on Twitter. Buddy, how you doing today? This Victory Monday.
You're too kind with the man of the hour. I'm doing good though. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm good, man. I you can hear it in my voice a little. I'm getting over a cold, but the Bills are 10-3, man. How mad can I be? You know.
All right. How mad can anybody be at this point? Exactly.
Well, hey, speaking of feelings, it's a good place to start the podcast. There was breaking news last Wednesday after we recorded the last episode of Trust the Podcast. Von Miller had exploratory surgery that was scheduled, and it was determined that he did indeed tear his ACL on Thanksgiving. That's 2 torn ACLs in back-to-back Thanksgiving Day games. Maybe Buffalo wants to try to avoid those games next year because it's not really good. It's not working out for him. They've got 2 victories, but it's not working out for him. Miller had the ACL repaired. A timetable currently unknown for a return. He's out for the season. But the Bills front office seemed very positive about him playing the bulk of next season, which would mean that it's not a complete tear, or I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but it doesn't sound like the worst case scenario for Von Miller coming off what looked to be a very gruesome injury.
Right. No, I mean, it certainly seemed like that. The news was relatively positive, and from the way that it seemed like it was worded, it wasn't a complete tear. When they did the surgery, they said, I think it was something to the extent of that they deemed that it was significant. It was significant damage, but it was just damage to the ACL that required repair. So yes, maybe it wasn't a complete tear, but certainly some discouraging news in terms of not having Von Miller available for the rest of the season. But yeah, no, I mean, as long as Von Miller can bounce back as he did right after he suffered his first torn ACL, like he did, if he's able to do that, come back to the Bills next year and be at 100% effective for the Bills, that would be good news for them.
Well, especially we'll talk about it later in the podcast with the development of Buffalo's other young pass rushers that Von Miller most certainly has played a hand in helping develop. But getting back to the good news here, Buffalo gets their revenge from an earlier loss this season to the New York Jets. They have a 20-12 victory in the books on Sunday. Buffalo improves to 10-3 for the second time in 3 seasons. They also started 10-3 in 2020. It's also the 7th time in franchise history Buffalo has been 10-3 or better through 13 games. So there's been a lot of scrutiny for the Buffalo Bills offense, and rightfully so. They've kind of slowed down a little, but again, they've done enough to win games, because it was brought up on Twitter today, and I apologize, I missed who brought the point up, but this time last year the Buffalo Bills were 7-6 coming off of an overtime loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, I mean, how much worse can it get than that? Being almost 500 midway through the season, where now they're 10-3, and they're with Miami losing, they're in very good position in the AFC East as well. So, perspective is nice. Obviously, the Bills have struggled a little. We'll talk about that here coming up, Brayton. But 10-3, not too bad.
Not too bad at all. I mean, certainly given where, as you mentioned, they were last year 7-6 coming out of their Week 14 matchup with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Unfortunately, losing that game in a heartbreaker overtime game. But this time around, they come away with 4 straight wins now, including a couple of divisional wins over the Patriots and the Jets. And yeah, no, yesterday's game certainly wasn't their best showing. I mean, yes, we always got to hear about the conditions of Buffalo and the weather conditions having a factor every single game, one way or another, for the Bills in Orchard Park. But I mean, yesterday, certainly the really crummy conditions to start off with certainly played a factor for both teams. It wasn't just the Bills. The Jets couldn't get anything going as equally as bad as the Bills couldn't get anything going because of the wet conditions. Then as that turned over to snow, it certainly seemed like the teams maybe got some better footing on the turf and got themselves in a better position to be able to try and put up some points and generate some offense overall. But overall, I mean, yesterday the Bills did just enough offensively to be that much better than the Jets, and they did a phenomenal job defensively shutting down Mike White, who has kind of exploded on the scene this year after showing a little bit of flash of pizzazz last year and then kind of being shut down by the Bills last year. This year, seems like he's not afraid to sling the ball a little bit more, get the ball moving down the field. And yesterday, the Bills did a really nice job of limiting Mike White while also taking some liberties also of putting on some really good, clean hits. I mean, the hit by Matt Oliver at first, then the hit followed by Matt Milano afterwards, just some really, I mean, that's about as clean as you're going to get of a hit on a quarterback without stepping over the line and being flagged for it. Just
and as brutal of a hit as you're going to get too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, at some point you would figure that someone would step in and say, "Buddy, no, that's enough. We can't no more of that." But the man's got guts, and he came out and he played like his life depended on it for sure.
100%. I mean, it was just such a gutsy effort from Mike White. You got to give credit for him for that. And then there's the other argument where people are just saying, well, you got to think about player safety. Why are you sending a guy like that out there after taking two incredibly hard hits and then having to go to the hospital afterwards? But, I mean, regardless of that fact, you still got to give Mike White props for just even being able to come back in the fourth quarter to try and help lead the Jets down the field and put up an effort against the Bills.
It's funny because this isn't a Jets podcast, but I'm sure John Cimino, our guy, would be shaking his head and agreeing with me right now when saying that the Jets couldn't have two more opposites in quarterbacks in Mike White and Zach Wilson in terms of their personalities. Now, moving on to our three big things brought to you by PuckLuck.com, your one-stop resource for all of your NHL sports betting action. PuckLuck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? Not to worry. PuckLuck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Please note, PuckLuck.com is in no way affiliated with the National Hockey League, its teams, or the NHLPA. PuckLuck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly. Now, running down the offensive stats, our first of the three big things this week, Josh Allen, under center, he was 16 for 27 passing, 147 passing yards, one touchdown with 10 carries for 47 yards and one touchdown. Not a big day at the office, but one of those games where you just do enough to win. And that's all Josh Allen had to do on Sunday. He recorded his sixth.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's all the Bills needed to do overall.
Absolutely. It was very much, and we'll talk about this later on in the podcast. Actually, no, we can talk about it right now because I didn't put it in later in the podcast. The Bills offense struggled out of the gate, and they really struggled to find their identity on Sunday. Oh no, it is right here. I'm sorry. I'm still sick over here trying to. I'm just going to move the podcast around as we're talking here real fast. The Bills offense struggled to find a rhythm, and Josh Allen was at the head of that. I mean, there's no doubt about it that it wasn't a pretty victory on Sunday, but to paraphrase Dawson Knox postgame, whether it's by 1 or by 100, a win is a win. And they did exactly what they had to do in the second half to win the game. Now, people like local clown reporter Jerry Sullivan attempt to bait Josh Allen by telling him the offense does not look like a Super Bowl winning offense, which is one of the funnier sound clips. Like, hey, yeah, the Bills offense doesn't look like they could win a Super Bowl right now, but guess what? You don't win the Super Bowl in the first week of December. Like, come on. I don't know what else to say to that aside from, get off your high horse, my man. But Josh Allen recorded his 6th rushing touchdown of the season. He's the first quarterback in NFL history with 6+ rushing touchdowns in 5 straight seasons. He's the 5th Bill ever with 6+ touchdowns in at least 5 seasons. Both Thurman Thomas and Andre Reed had 8 seasons, and O.J. Simpson had 5 of those seasons. Allen and Thomas are the only Bills with 6+ touchdowns in at least 5 consecutive seasons. Allen also surpassed the 600 rushing yard mark on the season, marks the 10th time in franchise history that Buffalo has 2 players with 600+ rushing yards in the same season. Devin Singletary currently at 642. It's also the second time in franchise history that Buffalo has multiple 600+ yard rushers in consecutive seasons. In 91 and 92, Thurman Thomas and Kenneth Davis did the same thing. It's the 24th game of Allen's career with a passing and rushing touchdown in the same game. Allen leads all NFL quarterbacks since 2018. Kyler Murray, second most with 16. Allen also tied Fran Tarkenton, that's a name, for 4th most games all time with a passing and rushing touchdown. Allen trails only Aaron Rodgers with 30 of those games, Steve Young with 31, and Cam Newton with 45 of those games. Allen's 22nd straight game with a passing and rushing touchdown, which sets a new career high and a new franchise record. Also, Brayton, Josh Allen is now the only quarterback in NFL history with 25+ passing touchdowns and 6+ rushing touchdowns in 3 different seasons. He had 37+8 in 2020, 36+6 in 2021, and currently 26+6 in 2022. So even though the Buffalo Bills offense is still struggling this past week, Josh Allen is still doing things that we've never seen before in the National Football League.
Oh, 100%. I mean, certainly there's not many quarterbacks that are of the breed of Josh Allen with the arm that he has, but not only that, but just the playmaking instincts and the abilities that he can do, not only with just his arm, but also his legs. I mean, so we saw Josh Allen yesterday not being as efficient early on, but again, I hate to continue to bring up the conditions because Tony Romo brought it up about a dozen times yesterday during the broadcast, but I mean, the weather, the way that it was just the really crummy, crappy rain that was falling and making things really slippery for guys certainly didn't help. But not only that, but even then, there were some mistakes being made on the offense. A couple of key drops early on that could have extended drives and continued to help things along just didn't come to fruition. And it took until the last drive of the second half for the Bills to finally get the ball moving down the field, and which eventually led to a Dawson Knox touchdown where he flipped an end over end to get into the end zone to put the Bills on the board. So, yeah, absolutely, the offense doesn't necessarily look like they're firing on all cylinders. Certainly they don't look like they're firing at the capability that they were in the first 6 games of the season with wins over like the Rams and the Titans and the Chiefs. But, I mean, man, I still think that there's another gear that this offense can get to, and I think Josh Allen obviously is the catalyst of that offense in terms of what he can bring to the table. I mean, obviously there's certainly some questions when it comes to play calling with Ken Dorsey, and it's a first-year offensive coordinator still learning on the job, and I think there are still those instances where I don't think Josh Allen and Ted Dorsey may be on the same page with certain ways they want to execute certain things. Things are going to go for the rest of the year, but as long as they're clicking as they head into the playoffs, and as long as they can continue to be on the same page, and Josh Allen can stay healthy and find his targets, and those targets can also make plays to help extend drives, the Bills are going to be just fine. And I know we'll get to the defense later on, but the way that defense was playing, if you can combine it with the offense getting back to its game that we saw in the first 6 games of the year, I don't know how many teams can beat the Bills if they're firing on all cylinders.
Absolutely. In games like yesterday, when the defense plays that well, you don't have to be perfect on offense, so it's okay to have those down games. Speaking of a down game, wide receiver Stephon Diggs can't always get 10 and 100 every week. This week, 3 receptions on 5 targets for 37 yards. His 324 receptions since joining Buffalo moved him past running back Fred Jackson for 5th most in franchise history. His 324 receptions since 2020 are also the most in the National Football League. 94 receptions this season for Diggs are tied for 4th most by a Bill in one season. Diggs needs just 7 receptions to occupy the top 3 spots for most receptions in a single season in franchise history. He had 127 receptions in 2020, 103 receptions in 2021. Diggs also has 3,999 receiving yards since joining Buffalo, tying him for 8th all-time in franchise record with Bob Chandler, who also has 3,999 receiving yards. And also on Sunday, Stephon Diggs became the 17th player in franchise history with 4,000 plus scrimmage yards. So that Stephon Diggs trade keeps paying off. But again, the offense was quiet on Sunday. Diggs was quiet on Sunday, but it's all good. We move forward because Dawson Knox, as Brayton mentioned, tight end Dawson Knox, 4 receptions and 7 targets for 41 yards and a touchdown and a giant leap into the end zone. Sunday was a good game for acrobats because you had Dawson Knox and Josh Allen both with some fantastic dives that you'll see in highlight reels for quite some time. It is good to note all of 17 of Dawson Knox's touchdown receptions have come from Josh Allen, which ties the pair for 10th most touchdowns for a quarterback receiver combo in team history with Jim Kelly, Don Beebe, Jim Kelly, Bill Brooks, and Josh Allen, Gabe Davis. So that's a neat stat as well.
Right on.
And I'm gonna hit you with one more here, Brayton. Running back Nyheim Hines. He had 1 rush for 3 yards, 1 reception on a target, 1 target for 4 yards, 2 kick returns for 40 yards, and 3 punt returns for 42 yards. It's the 6th time in his career and 2nd game in a row that Hines recorded a rush, reception, punt return, and kick return in the same game, the 30th such game in Bills history, and he's the 3rd player to post consecutive such games since Ed Rutkowski did it in 1963 and C.J. Spiller did it in 2010. Like I said, it doesn't pay to know how to find the stats. It pays to know how to find the good people who know the good stats, but that's a fun one for sure.
100%. No, and I mean, I think the one thing that I like seeing a little bit more of, and yes, while we want to see Stephon Diggs continue to just be that number 1 target, as he will remain the number 1 target for Josh Allen going forward, you're seeing more of the ball distribution going around. We saw Gabe Davis get a little bit more involved. We saw Isaiah McKenzie certainly getting a lot of targets for Josh Allen in the passing game. But, I mean, it certainly didn't help that for most of the game, it seemed like that Sauce Gardner was kind of just going everywhere, and the Bills avoid going in the direction of Sauce Gardner. And, you know, I certainly believe that Sauce Gardner is a good corner. I just think that there are instances where he gets away with a little bit more than maybe he should. But, you know, I guess they say in the NFL, you know you're good when you could get away with those sort of calls in the NFL. And I guess Sauce Gardner is one of those people as a rookie. But regardless of that fact, the nice thing was that we were starting to see a little bit more ball distribution, whether it was Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, Dawson Knox. I believe even Khalil Shakir got a target that resulted in a pass interference for going in the Bills' favor. So, you know, a little bit more ball distribution is a good thing for the Bills heading into the final steps of the season, and especially once we get to the playoffs, because, yes, the good teams will try to take away the number 1 targets, the number 2 targets, and then when that's the case, you rely on your depth targets to be able to kind of distribute the ball a little bit more, as we saw with Gabe Davis last year, especially in the game against the Chiefs when he had those 4 touchdown receptions. So, yeah, the more we start to see that as the season continues to dwindle down heading into the playoffs, probably the better. And even if you start to do that, you know, it allows for the other teams to have to game plan a little bit more for those extra targets. So, yes, maybe we will see Stephon Diggs get a little more targets, especially when it comes to the playoffs against some of the better teams that will likely be facing once it comes to playoff time.
Now moving over to our second of the 3 big things here, wrapping up the defense again for the umpteenth time this season. Linebacker Matt Milano was a monster on the field. 9 total tackles, 7 solo, 1 tackle for loss, 2 pass deflections, and 1 big quarterback hit. Milano has 12 tackles for loss this season, ranking him 3rd among all NFL linebackers. Defensive end A.J. Epinesa had 5 tackles for solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass deflection, and 1 quarterback hit. He has stepped up his game, but also Greg Russo has stepped up his game big time. 2 tackles, 2 solo, 2 total tackles, 2 of them were solo, 2 sacks, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass deflection, 2 quarterback hits. If I'm not mistaken, Russo now has 7 sacks on the season. This is also an interesting one. The 2nd time in his career on Sunday, or the game on Sunday, I should say, I'm sorry. The game on Sunday marked the 2nd time in Russo's career he has sacked 2 different quarterbacks in the same game. On Sunday, it was Mike White and Joe Flacco. Buffalo has 6 such games like this since 2006. No other Bill has done it more than once. So interesting stat for Greg Russo there. But again, he's stepped up his game. He has grown into the player that the Buffalo Bills drafted out of Miami. And even with the loss of Von Miller, you're still feeling the force from Greg Russo on that defensive line.
100%. And I think that was the biggest question heading into this stretch that we're going to have without Von Miller, right? Was where are they going to get this contribution for the pass rush aside from Von Miller? And Greg Rousseau is arguably right at the top of the players that you wanted to see more of in the pass rush. Yes, granted, it's one game, and we're hoping to see more, but I mean, that one game on Sunday, we saw Greg Rousseau just become sort of this player that the Bills are envisioning him becoming at the NFL level. And you know what kind of the scarier factor is? I really think there's even more to Greg Rousseau's game that we have yet to see just because he's still developing. He's still a young guy. He's just second year in the NFL. And we're already seeing him putting up these really nice games, these nice performances. We saw last year he put up a really great performance against the Chiefs in that regular season matchup where they blew out the Chiefs essentially on Sunday Night Football. And this year, we've already seen a couple of really good games from Greg Rousseau where we're seeing similar production. And I think he's really starting to put it all together right out there on the field from the edge. And as long as he can continue to do that, I mean, if I'm opposing teams, I'm kind of scared to see where that's going to be, especially next year when you hope to get Miller back at 100%. And hopefully you get to see some of these other pieces on the defensive line really start to come into their own. A.J. Epinesa, as you mentioned, had a really good game yesterday. A game where certainly I think we've been longing to see more from A.J. Epinesa and hoping to see him blossom a little bit more. And maybe a game like this will certainly help him kind of come out of his shell a little bit more. Shaq Lawson continues to come out and play really well from the edge in his second stint with the Bills. He seems to really come alive, especially when he's wearing the blue and red. And also Boogie Basham, even like we want to see more from him coming off the edge and even playing a little bit more in the defensive tackle spot. We're hoping to see and continue to get him playing all that much better, and especially on the inside part too. At Oliver, Jaquan Jones, Tim Settle, and when Jordan Phillips gets healthy, those guys are going to be key players as well, supplying pressure up the middle and also being really good players in run gap and trying to close up those gaps towards the inside. So the defensive line without Von Miller, I think at least through one game has answered the question as to just how well can they perform without the veteran presence, without their number one pass rusher. I think they performed really well, and especially in Greg Rousseau's case, I think there's still more positives to come as the season continues to wind down here.
And I certainly agree with that one. I'm looking at the defensive line, and you just think about it. And the one guy, I mean, obviously Ed Oliver stands out to me, but the most impressive thing about Ed Oliver is even if he's off the stat sheet, you can watch the game. And I'm not going to become one of those watch the game kind of guys, you know, but if you watch the game and you see Ed Oliver's play, even if he's off the stat sheet, he's still disruptive. And that says a lot about him, I think, because he has really grown into his own as a game wrecker on that defensive line. And
right.
If Greg Rousseau is hitting his stride now late into the season, I mean, you could be looking at a 1-2 punch that could be deadly come playoff time. Now, moving on to our third of the three big things, deeper into the win. Brayton, this one's simple. It's just called catch the damn ball. Following Sunday's performance, head coach Sean McDermott said the weather was not the reason that they had dropped so many passes. According to Pro Football Reference, Buffalo has 28 drop passes this season, trailing only Miami at 29 and Green Bay with 30. Buffalo's penchant for throwing the ball so much has them ranked 7th in the league with a 5.9% drop percentage. Right now, Baltimore leads the league with a 7.2% drop percentage. But if I'm not mistaken, Buffalo has either 99 more or 100 more pass attempts in comparison to the Ravens. My solution here, the Bills need Stickum, like in the movie Little Giants with the hot hands when he gets them stuck to his shirt. That's what the Bills need. I know it's illegal. I don't care, because at this point it's getting so frustrating, and there's really two people. I mean, Stephon Diggs is tied for the team lead in drops, but Stephon Diggs also does a lot of dope stuff that makes up for those drops. But like, it's very frustrating to watch Gabe Davis drop a ball, to watch Isaiah McKenzie drop a ball, and you're like, could you just catch one of them? Because Josh Allen maybe puts a little too much, maybe leads him, whatever. But it's like it's in your catch radius. You should be able to get it. You get paid to catch the ball, and you're not catching the ball. What's the problem here? But I'll get off my high horse there. I just thought I had a very good idea with the Coach O'Shea stick 'em.
Yeah.
And if y'all don't know what movie I'm talking about, after the podcast, go watch Little Giants. What a great movie.
I love Little Giants.
I got a question for you.
Great movie.
Got a question. Who the hell is Rick Moranis?
Oh my God! Who does? I mean, if you don't know who Rick Moranis is, a legendary Canadian actor,
You've probably not seen the famous videos on the internet. I'll have to send them to you after this.
Oh, the Bob McKenzie, Doug and Bob McKenzie. That's where it all began. That's where it all began.
We're going two different directions. I'm going for something else. I'll send it to you off the air, and I'm sure you'll find it funny. Cornerback Tre'Davious White, Brayton, back at 100%. He played all 74 snaps on defense on Sunday. Punter Sam Martin. Never thought I would say this because you never want the punter to be a major factor in a win, but he played a major factor in the field position battle on Sunday. He punted the ball 7 times, attempted 8 punts. 1 was blocked for a safety. 7 punts for 347 yards. That's a 49.6 yard average. 1 touchback, 2 down within the 20. His longest punt of the day was a 67-yard boot. That was absolutely impressive. Also, we give credit to when we give credit to where it's due. Kicker Tyler Bass, 2 for 2 on extra points, 2 for 2 on field goals. His successful field goal streak moves to 15 straight. His longest streak since he made 16 straight in games 3 through 9 in 2021. His 15 straight field goals ties Dan Carpenter for 7th longest in franchise history. Also, Bass has been good on 86.32% of his career field goal attempts. That's 82 of 95, the second highest in Bills history among kickers with 50-plus attempts. Steven Hauschka leads that stat with an 86.51 percentage, 109 of 126 successful attempts. Brayton, the Bills have a good kicker. The Bills have a good defense. They got a talented punter. They've got a good offense. They just got to kick it back into gear. Everything's looking up for the Bills despite the doom and gloom of 10-3, my man.
I know. I mean, you really do look at the team on paper and you think, man, this team should be, arguably they should be one of the best teams, and they are certainly the number 1 seed in the AFC right now, but you certainly look at the way they play on the field and you kind of watch how everything unfolds on the field, and I really hate dogging the team just because they have played really well this year, but you almost kind of come out of each game feeling like, man, they definitely feel like they should have been better here, or they should have been better there, or they should have done this differently there. It's all about putting it together. It's putting the right pieces into the puzzle and fitting the square pegs in the square holes and making sure, they're just executing and doing everything they need to be doing. Because when you look at the team on paper, they have one of the best groups and best coaching staffs and everything that you can imagine. It's all above league standards. There are teams in the NFL that look to the Bills as the top standard in the NFL. Bills, Chiefs, for years, obviously, the Patriots were right up there as well. But, the Bills are certainly a team going forward that other teams are going to mold themselves into trying to build what the Bills have with the coach, the general manager, the quarterback, the offensive weapons, the defensive specialists. I mean, everything that this Bills team, kind of speaks and represents is what other teams in the NFL are trying to emulate. And right now, I think most of it's firing on all cylinders with just the exception of a few pieces here and there. And then those few pieces, when they get firing on all cylinders, other pieces start to lag. So once they all start to kind of put things together, and hopefully that'll come playoff time, whether they're the 1, 2, 3, 4 seed in the AFC, certainly you hope that's when they start firing completely on all cylinders and get everything going in the playoffs. But right now, certainly, they've got most everything together. It's just trying to find those little bits that are not firing on those cylinders, getting themselves in line with everyone else.
And Brayton, with that being said, I couldn't put it better myself. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with our look ahead after this quick commercial break here on Trust the Podcast, only on the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And we're back here on Trust the Podcast. Brayton, we're looking ahead, my man. We've got injury news, we've got playoff news, and we've got Week 14 ahead of us. Week 15 ahead of us. Apparently, I don't know how to edit the show notes. Week 15 ahead of us. I'm glad I caught that. First off, as we mentioned, Von Miller out for the foreseeable future for the rest of the season. If not longer, we will know more about that in the future, but he is out with a torn ACL. Offensive lineman Ryan Bates left the game with an ankle injury. Sean McDermott said Monday afternoon that Bates is day-to-day. Defensive lineman Ed Oliver suffered some sort of chest injury on Sunday. McDermott said Monday afternoon that Oliver also is day-to-day. Fullback Reggie Gilliam missed the game with an ankle injury. He did not practice at all last week. The status is improving, per Sean McDermott. Defensive tackle Jordan Phillips also missed the game with a shoulder injury. He was a DNP all last week as well. And his status, much like Reggie Gilliam's status, is, quote, improving. Now, moving over to our playoff picture, it's a little muddled tonight because the New England Patriots do play, but worst case scenario, they'll be 7-6. So right now, the Buffalo Bills lead the AFC with a 10-3 record and a tiebreaker over the Kansas City Chiefs based on a head-to-head win percentage. Kansas City is second with their 10-3 record. The Baltimore Ravens are third at 9-4. They are tied atop the AFC North with the Cincinnati Bengals, but they have a wins tiebreaker over Cincinnati based on head-to-head win percentage. The Tennessee Titans bring up the pack of the division leaders at 7-6 in the 4th seed. The Bengals 9-4 are 5th. The Dolphins 8-5 are 6th, and the Los Angeles Chargers are 7-6, tied with the Jets. They win the tiebreaker over the Jets based on best win percentage in conference games. So we don't know yet if the Buffalo Bills can clinch anything on Saturday night at 8:15 on the NFL Network. Yes, the NFL Network. But it's a big freaking game, Brayton. You got the Miami Dolphins at 8-5. They're 3-4 on the road. They've lost 2 in a row on the road in the state of California. They are second in the AFC East. Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is continuing to have a fantastic season. Has 3,004 passing yards, 22 passing touchdowns, 5 picks with a 73.4 QBR, best for second, or that's good for second best in the National Football League. Although, Brayton, his 2 worst games of the season have taken place in the last 2 weeks. He had a 19.9 QBR in a 33-17 loss to the 49ers and a 24.7 QBR in a 23-17 loss to the Los Angeles Chargers. Also, before I get your thoughts on the Dolphins, I do want to mention wide receiver Tyreek Hill is incredible on this Dolphins offense. 100 receptions, 1,460 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. Suffered an ankle injury late in the loss to the Chargers on Sunday night. He is expected to play on Saturday night against the Bills, but it is something to keep an eye on with a shortened week. But also ankle injuries with wide receivers are never good. So, Brayton, thoughts on the Miami Dolphins coming into Buffalo on this streak of theirs, losing streak of theirs?
Yeah, no, I mean, certainly looking ahead to Saturday's game, I mean, this is probably, I mean, outside of the Chiefs game, this has become the biggest game of the year for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, it helps right now with the Bills having a 2-game lead. So even if the Bills do happen to lose once again to the Dolphins, you know, they're not out of the AFC East lead just yet. But I mean, a win certainly goes a long way towards securing that spot as the number 1 seed, at least in the AFC East. And then with the number 1 seed overall in the AFC, a win certainly secures that spot for another week remaining atop of the conference. So, yeah, no, looking ahead to the Dolphins, I watched a lot of that game on Sunday night against the Chargers, and certainly that team did not look like they had everything going on the right page. You know, Tua Tagovailoa was inaccurate. He definitely did not look comfortable, and certainly, you know, that's kind of, I think, what we see out of Tua is he'll have these games where he's super accurate, he's hitting his targets, and his timing is all good. And then next thing you know, he gets in this really big swing where he is inaccurate, he's misfiring, he's not hitting his receivers, he's making some bad decisions on the field. And, you know, I think that's what a lot of people in Miami kind of saw in the first 2 years. And I think they wanted to kind of, you know, say, I think there's more to him, but I think that's really what you're going to get out of Tua. Yes, he may have some good stretches of play where he looks like an MVP, and the next thing you know, he hits these stretches where he's struggling, and it leads to losing streaks like this. So certainly it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out on Saturday night when the Dolphins come to town this time, and perhaps playing in some winter weather compared to when the Bills had to go to Florida and play in the heat in the sun, having to play against the Dolphins' best player in the sun.
Well, I'll tell you what. That's funny you bring that up, Brayton, because we heard a story This is entitled Baby, It's Cold Outside. Miami reportedly, and has been since confirmed, they had propane heaters at their bench on Sunday night at SoFi Stadium, with the temperature being 55 degrees outside. Orchard Park expecting snow and 20-ish degree temperatures on Sunday. That is quite the swing, Brayton, from the last game Buffalo and Miami played down in Miami, which you have highlighted. But they are in for quite the surprise on Saturday night, especially too because
no kidding,
everybody around us knows. I mean, people that don't come from the area may not know, but those around us know that at nighttime, and it's that cold and it's that dark at night, oh man, it get brutally cold, especially out in Orchard Park where the wind is almost always swirling. It's going to be miserable on Sunday or Saturday night. I'm sorry, for all participants.
What are you talking about? It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Lots of fun football. Winter weather football. So much fun.
I feel like you're taking the piss on that one. So, Brayton, we can wrap this up this way. I want you to know who you got on Saturday night, the Dolphins or the Buffalo Bills?
I will take those Bills. I will say that despite the potential for winter weather, which means it's going to be snow this time and not some, drizzling, crappy rain turning into snow. It seems like it's going to be snow 100% of the time. I mean, depending on how much snow falls, if we get the Snow Bowl similar to 5 years ago, I mean, it'll be a low-scoring affair. But I'll err on the side of caution. I think it will snow enough where it'll cover the field, but maybe not as much as it did then. I'll say 27-10 final score. Bills beat the Dolphins on Saturday night.
The Bills have been playing close games lately. I think the Dolphins have enough firepower that even if Tua can toss it up like he has, or if they get lucky where Tyreek Hill picks up a fumble and runs it in for a 50 or 30 or 40 whatever yard touchdown, that was impressive.
That was such a Chargers play, by the way. That was just peak Chargers right there.
The Chargers love to do one thing, and it's sit directly on their own nuts all the time. They've wasted so many good players' careers in that cesspool of a franchise.
Pain. Although that's the word, pain.
Although they did have one of the most badass theme songs ever, and that one video of the Terminator, go Chargers, go! That was one of the best ones. And the San Diego Supercharger theme song was just the best too. But I think the Bills they probably continue their low scoring affair, which low scoring, God forbid, 21 points. I think. I'm thinking Buffalo wins 21-17. With that 17 being a late touchdown, much like the game against the Jets, where the Jets were driving late. I think the Dolphins are able to get it close, but to make it look good on paper. But I think Buffalo's going to be able to handle Miami relatively well. And for John, for the second straight week, I tip my cap to the ESPN Analytics Matchup Predictor. 74.3% of America has Buffalo beating the Dolphins. 25.4% have the Dolphins beating the Bills. And for some god-awful reason, 0.3% voted for a tie. Whoever those 0.3 people are, I hope you get coal in your stocking, because that would be the worst.
Listen, if it wasn't the Bills, I might be one of those people that pick a tie every single game. Though not happy.
I wish we had that. Remember we almost had the tie last year that would have created all sort of chaos. That would have been fun, but no one likes to have fun, Whatever.
Right? That's the fun part.
Yeah. Well, hey, with that being said, Brayton is at BJ Wilson on Twitter, or Brayton J. Wilson on Twitter. I almost messed it up. I am Ryan Wolfe at WolfeBLTD on Twitter. As you can tell, my voice is starting to give up. That's why I've just kind of started talking like a substitute teacher on the podcast. So, Brayton, with that being said, as always, we are Trust the Podcast.
Oh, and you're not at all. No, not at all.
God damn it. No, you better not try. We'll catch you same time, same place next week, my friends. Brayton, thank you for tuning in. And as always, go Bills.
Go Bills.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.